Here we are. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope this finds you in good health and secure. Kosen Rufu. You heard that term? Many of you who've practiced through Nichiren Shoshu and their offspring, they focus a lot on this Japanese translation of the Lotus Sutra and a term that they've coined of Kosen Rufu. They fetishize it to all ends, but it is an important secondary goal of Buddhism. I don't mean to relegate it. Let me flush this out. In this Buddhism reference, I have two entries which could be concerned with being about the same thing. But I think it's interesting that I separated them. One is Kosen Rufu. The other one is world peace, which is, the political leitmotif of several organizations, right? I want to be careful here because our goal in Buddhism is to live a fully expressed, full potential experience of our lives. That is what Buddhism is about. And in order to do that, as Shakyamuni taught, and more focused as ultimately in the Lotus Sutra on our Bodhisattva engagement with life, right? All the teachings lead to there's the idea of separation of self and other, self and environment, samsara, Buddhahood, all this duality or separation or illusion, whatever terminology we want to put to it, right? Ultimately, to live our life to the full is to remove those boundaries one by one, where we finally perceive ourselves as in the flow of all formations, the universe, life, quote unquote, right? Our description, our understanding, our experience of life evolves through our Buddhist practice, right? From a very insular, individual, egotistical perception with the world, the universe, life really surrounding us, to being an involved, engaged, moment-to-moment instantiation of all of life. It's a very different perspective, right? Understanding, experience. So, of course, I say of course, and this is why I said secondary, not because it's not as important, but because it's a result of our self-enlightenment, and our self-enlightenment to the full is engaged in self and environment and others, the Bodhisattva path. Then the additional result of our focused awakening is to awaken our environment, what's around us. So you could say that's the whole goal, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that your mandala, your Gohonzon mind, your experience of Buddha-ness is the primary focus of Buddhist practice, because that is the seed, the root, the progenitor of all the other results, the other influences, the other accomplishments, all come via that self-realization, self-enlightenment. That is the goal. Wonderfully, as we achieve that goal, the world around us also changes. because the world we're engaged with it all the time. So what we do with our mind and our life energy isn't separate from, it's engaged with our surroundings, right? So what do we do as bodhisattvas? That's our first engagement as bodhisattva, influencing toward enlightenment, yeah? Secondarily, again with the word secondarily, as a result of, then we assist others to do exactly as we're doing. They then begin on their path of evolution of mind and awareness and bodhisattva, right? Path, Buddha way. And the more that continues, right? They tell two friends and they tell two, right? The way it propagates, more and more people get involved, and that affects our sangha, it affects our community, it affects our city, our state, our cultural norms, right? It becomes this wave of enlightenment energy that propagates throughout our culture, our country, our nation, from nation to nation, right? You just keep extrapolating. So what ends up happening in the long run is that the karma, the energy of the world, which we now live in a time very well documented as ruled by greed, right? Authoritarianship, anger, manipulation, backstabbing, and stupidity, foolishness, just utter inhumanity everywhere. Right? So we are pushing into that ignorance with our simple self-realization, not shying away from the influence we have on others, helping them to do exactly the same. Those numbers continue to grow until they influence and have an affect on that totality of human sentient minds on the planet. And if we're doing that correctly, the greed, anger, and stupidity, the foolishness, at least the foolishness, starts to be overtaken by a desire for enlightenment, humanity, equanimity, all of that. And eventually a tipping point occurs where the desire to resolve differences, right? Conflict resolution, something I believe we should be teaching from kindergarten on. Our public schools need to inculcate this into the minds of young people without violence, without reactionary. Figure it out. Make things amicably beneficial. It means letting go of our primary clinging and attachments, right? Of our desires whole hog. And if anything gets in the way of those desires, then go to war. No, maybe you need to pull back a little on your desire. Maybe you might even get something greater and more multifaceted if you negotiate a beneficial resolution. And if you get accustomed to that beneficial resolution of conflicts, perhaps everyone gets more than they expected. Gosh, what a thought. But that's a very distant voice today. So Buddhism and our practice of self-realization leads toward this greater and greater result. But that result isn't our primary goal. It's an effect of our practice of self-realization And this is why Bodhisattva work is so critical to that primary goal. And the way Shakyamuni put it is, you won't really be fully enlightened until you assist, promote, support others in this goal. But that's a very individual mission. The result is not only self-enlightenment, but self-enlightenment on a scale that once again proves out what Shakyamuni said all along. There is not a separation of self and other. That's an illusion. When we awaken the self, quote unquote, we also awaken our surroundings. So one of the results of self-enlightenment is the awakening and enlightenment of all sentient minds. And that is what we can call world peace, Kosen Rufu, whatever label you want to put on it. But it's important to understand that, because terms like Kosen Rufu, or world peace for that matter, they're words that have a lot of charisma to them, as though they're very politically charged, because it means somehow that we as individuals can somehow affect this immense situation in the world, which is, quite frankly, intimidating, scary, and seems kind of an unreasonable goal. How can I don't know how old you are, but the longer we live, the less effectual we feel. We feel more and more powerless in this world of greed, anger, and stupidity. We do. It's just so overwhelming, right? We're going past 8 billion people on the planet. That's a huge number of sentient minds. How do I influence them? Come on. It's a nice thought. It's kind of cool, but we don't feel engaged with it. That's why it's important to understand. And I think I'll read both terms, because they're both really facets of the same idea. But remember, this is your mind, your attitude, your intent, your Buddha-ness. And you're not sharing it with the world to become enlightened. You are focused on your own as an influencer, there's a modern term, and a supporter of others doing the same work. That ultimately results in, this is why I say secondary, this wonderful additional proof, if you will, of how powerful, how immense this practice is. That makes sense? So what I have here, Kosen Rufu, if you look it up, you'll get a definition that it's a phrase found in the Japanese translation of the Buddhist scripture Lotus Sutra. It's informally defined as world peace through individual happiness. See, that's already confusing. World peace through individual happiness. So if we all smile, the world will be saved. It shouldn't say happiness, should it? I mean, maybe we can use that as a shorthand, but I don't like it. It's really peace through individual realization, accomplishing our Buddha-ness. It's world peace through individual practice, right? Stop pointing to the results as somehow manifest because you say it. What's the only thing that's manifest when you invoke it is Buddha-ness. That leads to all these other things, like happiness, like world peace, like Kosen, whatever. Right? You invoke your Gohonzon mind so you can realize the true nature of all phenomena. Boom. That's Buddha-ness. Everything else comes from there. But I got this off the internet. This is, I don't know what sect put this up, but whatever. It refers to the future widespread dissemination of the Lotus Sutra. That's the most accurate statement in that definition, which is what I'm trying to disassemble for you so you understand the actual use for this term. It's the widespread dissemination of the Lotus Sutra. Propagation. Bodhisattva effort. See, that makes it sound like if you just wrote a book and spread it all over the world, everything would be fixed. Well, religions have tried that. It hasn't worked very well. Do you see why I want to make this distinction? The Lotus Sutra tells the story of a future period in some 2,500 years after Shakyamuni Buddha's passing, an age of great disarray, distractions, and degeneration, when the ultimate teachings of the Lotus Sutra are in danger of being lost. Yeah, we know this. This straight from Shakyamuni, right? In this story, it is the future bodhisattvas, you and I, practitioners of the Lotus, whose life is dedicated to raising the life condition and capacity of others for awakening their Buddha mind, right? This mission, embodied by Nichiren in his teachings and mission, is our charge as those very future bodhisattvas foretold in the Lotus Sutra. The inference being that a concerted effort to prevent the loss of the ultimate teachings of Buddhism, of Lotus Sutra practice, will maintain the presence and influence of more and more sentient minds to overcome the avarice, greed, anger, subversive and inhuman tendencies of the samsaric world run amok by dispelling the foolishness or ignorance of the path to enlightenment of the majority of the people of Earth. That's it. That's basically the concept of Kosen Rufu. It's kind of a layer put on top of your practice. It's like a carrot. Like, I don't want you to get distracted by that. It will come. It will come through your effort to enlighten yourself. Don't get distracted by this political goal. It's nice. It's nice to know that that's an inevitability of enlightenment for yourself and others. Yes. But if you make it a goal, I worry you will be disappointed. You will rue your efforts. You won't see immediate results. You'll be discouraged. Don't let that become the hinge pit of your practice. You follow? All right, so having read that, and that's Kosen Rufu, I'm going to add to this because it's completely related, right? Is the entry I put in the book on world peace. I think I dissected a little bit better there. Not that I thought about combining both of them, but I kind of feel like if you're going to use this book as a reference, you'll probably look up either way. What I probably should do is reference world peace in Kosen Rufu. So I will do that. That will be an edit. So the two will talk to each other in the book, which I'm doing all over the place. I don't know why I didn't do it there, except that world peace I just recently added. So you can see the book continues to evolve. All right, world peace. Let's get into it. A state when the population of humans on Earth learn conflict resolution through amicable and mutually beneficial means without the use of force. I mean, that's world peace isn't a strictly Buddhist thing, right? So I'm defining world peace here as a Buddhist outside of the term Kosen Rufu, which is really kind of a sectarian term, but okay. So that we can understand the context of how this comes about, what it means to us as Buddhists, right? Secondly, it's an abstract goal of Buddhism achieved through the widespread practice of personal equanimity and the cessation of cravings and clinging. Because that's the root, right? The Four Noble Truths. If we can achieve that self-realization of divorcing ourselves from attachment, clinging, identification, and we can support and assist others in doing that, this is how we get to a condition of sentience that is driven by this full expression of potential in equanimity, or as close to it as possible, lessening the karmic repercussions that lead from ignorance to violence, so on and so forth. Right? So the term is a modern interpretation of the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice through the achievement of Bodhisattva training and life. For the full expression of Shakyamuni's teachings of enlightenment to be experienced, it is necessary that the practitioner is not only accomplished in practice for the self, right, but also that his environment acts to support his awakening. In the practical sense, this is the Bodhisattva mission to fully realize enlightenment by way of raising the awakening in the others in his environment. This is the way. In a version of the Lotus Sutra translated by H. Kern back in 1884 from Sacred Books of the East, Volume 21, such statements as, and I'm going to quote H. Kern's translation. Remember, this is from 1884. This is a long time ago, and this is a Western scholar. So, as I've said before, and it's going to be really obvious when I read this, and those of you who've followed the Lotus Lectures playlist will know, as I've used his translation of the Lotus Sutra throughout the many translations, actually, but his in particular, and you can hear his kind of Church of England cultural normative vernacular, right? The way he talks about things. But it doesn't diminish the sense of and the core of Shakyamuni's teaching, which I find really fascinating. If you don't get hung up on the rhetoric that is, you know, the Church of England, you'll hear the meaning of Shakyamuni's teachings come right through. And I find that interesting. So here's one quote. "The wise man who has heard this law should be constant in observing it. If he earnestly strives after a peaceful life, equanimity, Kotis of beings will surely protect him." Right? The Shoten Zenshin, the forces, the influences of life. More specific to this discussion is a little longer quote here, if you'll permit me. "Further, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva who, after the complete extinction of the Tathagata at the end of time, the last period, the last 500 years, when the true law is in a state of decay," right? The fear of losing the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, "is going to propound this Dharma Paryaya, but must be in a peaceful state of mind, and then preach the law. Whether he knows it by heart or has it in a book, in his sermon he will not be too prone to carping at others, not blame other preaching friars, not speak scandal, nor propagate scandal. He does not mention by name of other monks, adherents of the vehicle of disciples, to propagate scandal. He cherishes even no hostile feelings against them, because he is in a peaceful state. All who come, one after the other, to hear the sermon he receives with benevolence, and preaches the law to them without individuousness. He refrains from entering upon a dispute. But if he is asked a question, he does not answer in the way of those who follow the vehicle of disciples. On the contrary, he answers as if he had attained Buddha knowledge, confidence, right? You don't shy away from a question or being questioned. You answer forthrightly what Shakyamuni has taught. You don't get preoccupied by argumentation. Yeah, but you guys do blah, 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 blah. See, that's what. This is from the Peaceful Practices chapter. It's not the only teaching, but it points to an attitude and intent that doesn't fall victim to engagement by ignorance, misunderstanding. It's about conflict resolution. Whether you know from wisdom, as he was saying, your own accomplishment, you know it by heart, or you have reference materials like this to help you support and teach somebody who wants to learn, don't engage in rebukes and challenges. Just answer from the teachings. These quotes are examples of the rhetoric in chapters like the Peaceful Practices and others that imply this eventuality of Buddhist practice leading ever more toward an awakening of mankind to live life free of cravings and clingings. See life condition. Logically, a populace freed from the cravings and clinging attachments, at least in great numbers, has the potential to resolve differences and conflicts to amicable agreements without resorting to reactionary defensive aggression or violence. There it is. Leads to world peace. It is possible then to envision, with time, a de-escalation of the defensive postures of people, gradually influencing the posture of nations to dismantle the military-industrial complex as unnecessary. Right? You can't forcibly dismantle the military-industrial complex because by your actions, you're just going to war with it. You're doing exactly what they're doing. So they'll just endlessly justify it, they being the promoters of such conflict resolution, right? You have to make them come to their own realizations that we don't need to do this anymore. Isn't that brilliant? Governance could be moved from a preoccupation with possession and control to creating a safe and healthy environment for the human race and life to flourish. Isn't that what governments should be focused on? The valuation of human life could rise to be the only objective of a well-governed people and planet. This is the implied goal of Bodhisattva practice, achievable through propagation of Lotus Sutra Buddhism. So there you have it. From a non-Buddhist standpoint, world peace is only achievable via this enlightened course of thinking. Buddhism is the playbook to achieve that enlightened course of thinking, and it starts with each and every one of us as an individual. Now maybe these terms in relation to our practice make perfect sense. They're not just carrots out there for us to, because that's samsaric to do that. Do you see? You set up carrots for yourself, reasonable or not, you're attaching yourself. There's only one thing, if you want to call it attachment or clinging to your desire, and this has been asked, it's been documented, asked of Shakyamuni, to achieve enlightenment. This is why the Lotus Sutra is so important as a Buddhist practice. Because simply by chanting, we invoke, we manifest our Buddha nature. It's not a carrot. It's like waking up in the morning. Do you think through your night of sleep, or however you sleep, that the goal of your sleep is so that you can open your eyes and awaken in the morning? Is that a carrot that you're chasing? Right? It's just part of the process of life. We just are engaging it, right? Isn't that fundamentally what Buddhism is about? As Shakyamuni taught us. Buddha-ness, it's not some place you have to go or something you need to achieve, although that rhetoric is in a lot of translations. It's already there. That capacity for enlightenment, it's built into our sentient mind. We just awaken it. It's like without it, we're asleep, just plummeting through life, waiting for stuff to happen to us. Oh my God, looking at all those frames. Oh, it disheartens me. I'm just going to have to get a full-on computer. I'm so sorry of these little glitches in the video. I'm just too animated for this computer to deal with. Anyway, technical trouble. So my apologies. Hopefully you get the gist of all of this. Kosen Rufu World Peace. And it encourages you to have confidence in your practice, to invoke your Buddha-ness. From that comes everything. Right? So thank you for listening. Thank you. Take a moment, if you will, to like and subscribe. Not because it puts you on the hook for anything, but because it helps the algorithms of YouTube make us easier to find. For those who are trying to practice or curious about practice but can't find a good resource, that's what the mission is here. Our resource on this channel, on the podcast, on the threefoldlotus.com website, the ebooks, the print book, all of it is about encouraging, supporting, removing doubt to practice Buddha's teachings correctly via Nichiren's insights, yes? So thank you. Thank you for participating, for being bodhisattvas. You have all my appreciation and gratitude. Patrons on Patreon, PayPal. You guys are amazing. Take care of your health. Be kind. Start with yourself. And I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.